Well, I'd like to just kind of start by making a couple general comments about the class, and then I'll be glad to answer some questions at that point. What I see in this group is, really a group that came together in a short amount of time, and our objective was to really stay true to our core values and our objectives here, and that's to recruit men of high character that are accountable to themselves and their teammates, show toughness on the field and the ability to make plays, and want to be members of our community here at Montana State. And so, to speak to the first one of the things that coaches around the country do, one of the first things we do when we're recruiting young men is we look for a transcript. And we can see a lot from that transcript. How important is their education to them? Have they been accountable? Shows even how many days they've missed in school. And so those are details that coaches that are doing their job pay attention to. The average GPA with this group of young men, these 19 guys that signed with us, is a 3.42, which is almost identical to the grade point average that the incoming class of freshmen last year here at Montana State had. And I'm not talking about the football team. I'm talking about the entire student body. This is one of the best institutions in the western United States, and certainly in the state of Montana. And so the young men that we're bringing here value the education that they're going to get here. And our recruiting was in line with the mission of this university. And I think that's bared out by their commitment that they've shown throughout their high school years. And so I'm excited about that. One of the other things that we really made an emphasis in was to get longer. And people say, what is length? Well, it's height plus wingspan. So, it's a kid that's 6'2", that has a 6'5" wingspan, he's going to play more like 6'5" than he is 6'2". And so, if you look at our front seven guys that we signed, the linebackers, tight ends, D-line, athlete type of guys that we put in there, O-line, their average height was almost 6'4", 6'3 plus. And so we're trying to eat up space at the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball and create space for ourselves at the line of scrimmage on the offensive side of the ball. And so those were things that were really important to me in this class. Number one, we got to get longer, more athletic and faster at some of the skill positions. And then we also had to keep in mind our objective of making sure that we recruit first-class young men. And so those are the things that I tried to focus on. Our recruiting class covers 6 states. We signed 7 guys at the line of scrimmage on the offensive and defensive lines. We addressed some immediate needs at the quarterback position, on the offensive line, and in the secondary. We signed 3 transfers that I think have the ability to have an immediate impact in our program in a positive way. And, it's the one thing about recruiting, I don't know exactly what kind of players these guys are going to be just yet. They got to get here, they got to develop, buy into what we're doing, and be immersed in our culture. So I'm not going to be able to tell you this is a 5-star recruiting class. That's going to come down the road. We'll see where these guys are in 2 or 3 years and how much they've been able to contribute to our program and our university. But I do know this, these are 5-star people. And that's the thing that was most important to me in this process. And I think our staff did a tremendous job in a short amount of time of not losing sight of that. We don't care about the guys we didn't get. We care about the guys that we did get. These guys are part of the Montana State family, and we can't wait to get them here and start working with them. And so, extremely excited about these 19 young men, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Okay, did you recruit for a need or top athlete?
Both. We had needs on the offensive line. We lost 4 starters, and so we had to try to replace some of that depth immediately. But there were some need things that came up. Secondary I saw as a need, defensive line is a need, offensive line is a need. We had a quarterback need, obviously, with Dakota moving on. The second part of that question, did we recruit best athlete? I think the best athletes theory has to go into play. At some point in time, you're going to have a bunch of guys on that board that you're going, that guy's pretty good, that guy's pretty good, that guy's pretty good. And we started to fill some of our needs in the front 7. So yes, even though we maybe on paper didn't have a great need at running back or wide receiver, we felt like there were some guys athletically that we couldn't pass up.
One of your mantras is beat the sky, own the state. Do you feel like you own the state this time around in recruiting, doubling Montana?
I know this. We signed 10 guys from the state of Montana. I think we easily took care of that job. And if we don't do that here, we're never going to win big here. In order to win and win big at Montana State, the foundation is Montana kids. They understand how special this place is. They do a great job of being the conduit to our kids from California or Texas or Washington and really relating what an important thing it is to be a Bobcat football player and again how special this university is. And so that's always going to be a priority for me. It was a priority for me forming my staff, and it will continue to be a priority moving forward in terms of our recruiting.
Your first time as head coach of this program, going through the recruiting process, what was the experience like? What kinds of stuff did you learn?
I learned that you just gotta have patience which is a really hard thing to do, especially in a recruiting cycle where, you know, we don't have as much time to do our homework maybe on kids because of the coaching change. And so that's one thing that I learned, that you don't have to spend all your money on signing day. There's still a lot of good players out there, and if you have some patience and you still got some money left in your wallet, you're probably going to benefit from that. And so that's one of the things that I think I learned through this process. And so I think we had discipline. You have to have a lot of discipline. You have to know who you are and just stick to your guns and say, okay, you know, Coach Peterson used to always tell us, these recruits will tell us who they are, you just got to listen to them. And so those words were very true throughout this process. And I feel like we listened to these kids and we let them tell us who they were. And I feel really strongly that this group of young men that's coming here are coming here for the right reasons. They want to be Bobcats. Their education's important to them. And I think that's the most important thing. There's plenty of good football players. You can't get crazy looking at those guys all the time. I mean, it's like, this whole thing is like, it's like dating, right? You know, we did speed dating. And so in speed dating, you better have a pretty good idea what you're looking for. And I think we did a good job of keeping that in mind.
Can you talk a little bit about the challenges maybe you encountered when trying to sell kids on a program in transition?
Yeah, you know, what am I selling here? I'm selling the biggest, best university in the state of Montana. I'm selling the history and tradition of this football program. I'm selling the people here at Montana State, the community of Bozeman. So that's an easy sell. I think once they sit down with me, they're going to realize I'm an authentic person. You know, I'm not a used car salesman. I'm going to tell them exactly where they stand. People are going to do their homework. There's this little thing called the internet now, I guess, that they can just type my name in and all kinds of information is going to come up. And so, you know, they're going to know who I am. And this is a small profession in terms of the fraternity. So, you know, football people know football people. And they're going to be able to say, okay, tell me what this guy's about. What are his values? And I think those things are going to be pretty in line with who I am as a man.
Yeah, I know you mentioned it before, but just walking these halls and seeing the great players that are hanging in the halls, a lot of those guys are Montana guys. So how much influence did you see in that, and how much do you think Montana guys can be the baseline of this program?
I think they always have been. I think they always have been, and they always will be. I don't know, you know, you talk about Caleb Schreibeis, you talk about Kane Ione. You know, and there's just been, you know, even the guys that are here right now, the backbone of our program right now, Chad Newell, Gunnar Brecky. I mean, these kids are Montana kids, and so I just don't think it can be done. I don't think you can win a national championship here without the foundation being Montana kids. They're the glue for this program. They're the ones that are going to give their heart and soul for this place because they grew up wanting to be Bobcats. And I get that, and that's important to me as the head coach here.
You talked about the transfers, but do you see anyone else maybe having an immediate impact, and what's your philosophy on freshmen coming in?
Yeah, you know, one of the things I feel strongly about is that it's, you know, every freshman's, it's in their best interest to probably redshirt because they can acclimate to college life, you know, academically, socially, get a feel for the speed of the game. But there's some kids that are going to be ready. And so we'll make those decisions probably about after week 3 of fall camp. And we'll sit all these guys down and say, this is what we see your role as. We feel like you've got an opportunity to help us and we want to go forward with this and not redshirt you, and here's the plan. Or, hey, we think this is going to be best for you in the long term is to take this red shirt. So, you know, those are things that the difference between who these guys are on paper and where they end up on September 1st when we play Idaho is simple. It's how they perform and what they do. It's the work that they put in between now and the time they get here to prepare themselves to go compete for a job, and how they perform once they're here. None of these guys were promised playing time or told that they were going to come in and play right away. We'll just see how it goes.
Can you talk about the transfers and what you wanted in each one?
Well, at quarterback, I wanted maturity because I felt like we had some good young players in the program, but to have a young man like Tyler, you know, you haven't got an opportunity to meet any of these kids. You're going to be blown away when you sit down and talk to Tyler Brugman. This guy's a pro. He's an exceptional young man in terms of his ability to handle things. He's been in a number of places, very mature, has assimilated into our locker room seamlessly. That's important when you bring in a veteran quarterback, because if he's an ego guy, if he's a me guy, then the guys in the locker room are going to be resistant to him. Tyler's the furthest thing from that. He's hungry and he's humble. He's got a great work ethic. He comes from a great family. He's had a variety of experiences. He was one of the most highly recruited quarterbacks in the country coming out of high school. He's here because this is his chance to be the guy, and he wants to maximize that. He knows it's a competition, but he's doing everything he can to prepare to take advantage of that. And so we're excited about him being here. Alex Neal, again, offensive line was a huge concern for me when I came in here. You look at it, you go, we've got some good young guys in the program, but it's a developmental position, you know, and you've got a group of young men that have played together at a high level for a number of years here, and so we felt like we needed to address that. And Alex is a guy who was originally committed to Montana, turned at the last minute kind of when UNLV came in, wanted to go to an FBS program and see what that was all about, but always really wanted to major in engineering, and the whole thing came full circle. This was the easiest recruitment I've ever done. He got here, he was wearing a Carhartt and a flannel, had a smile on his face that hasn't left since he's been here. I mean, he just looks at the mountains and then says, this is home. And he's been a tremendously hard worker for us in the weight room up to this point. Showed athleticism and toughness, competitive nature in our morning workouts, and so I'm excited about this kid. I think he's got a chance to be a leader for us down the road and to be a contributor for us immediately. And then Nigel Hale, a young man from Long Beach, California, by way of the University of Washington, played on the national championship team, high school championship team at St. John Bosco, highly recruited, U.S. Army All-American, started a bunch of games for us at Washington when I was there as a true freshman, you know. Kind of a crazy deal, man. I mean, I walked into St. John Bosco, we weren't even recruiting him, and I was talking to their football secretary, who's a wonderful lady, and I said, how's Nigel doing? Knowing that he'd gone through some family things and you know, some difficult situations for him, and she said, you know what, he's doing really, number had changed. And I just called him to say, hi, how's it going? And the conversation just kind of took off, and he realized that Coach Alexander was here as our secondary coach, and the next thing you know, he's in Bozeman, and he's sitting here, and we're down at his grandmother's house, and he's like, I think that's the right place for me. And I'm like, let's go. And so, I was fired up about that one, and that kind of gets through the transfer group. We're really, really excited about those guys. I think they're guys that all have a chance to have a huge impact here and finish their careers in an exceptional fashion at Montana State.
Can you tell me again what the biggest thing you like about your quarterback, your transfer quarterback?
Again, I think it's his maturity. You know, he's an accurate pass. The three things that I think about quarterback play is this, keeping in mind that I was never a quarterback, but I've been around the game for a while, and I've had a chance to see some really good ones. And so the guys that I think are the best, the three qualities I think they have, I think they're all good decision makers. You know, because there's a time there's a time for everything, right? There's a time to throw the ball out of bounds. There's a time to take a knee. There's time to slide. You know, those are things that you know, you have to learn over time. You have to be a good decision maker. The second thing is accuracy. I think guys with big arms, that doesn't always equate into the right combination that you're looking for. Kellen Moore's probably a really easy example for me during my time at Boise. He was a starting quarterback for us for 4 years, and you wouldn't say that Kellen had an exceptionally strong arm. He just ended up being the winningest quarterback in college football history when his career was said and done. And it was because he was a great decision maker and he was extremely accurate. He could put the ball on that outside number so the guy could turn and run and get those yak yards that are going to be the difference between a 6-yard gain and a 70-yard touchdown if the ball's placed properly. And so also reduces the opportunity for a team to take the ball away from you. And then the third thing is leadership. And there's a lot of different types of leadership, but really it's just helping a group or an individual achieve their goals. And I think Tyler possesses all three of those qualities, and I'm excited that he's here.
Do you feel like you're able to get a higher caliber player with a guy like Nigel Hale, just because of his circumstances giving him a second chance?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of his familiarity with myself and Coach Alexander, and the situation that he was in. You know, he made a conscious choice. He didn't enroll in junior college because he didn't want to have to get his AA to come back out. He wanted this to be a quick turnaround, and so I think it was really, you know, I think it was good for both of us. It was good for him because he was coming to a place where he could have a fresh start in an environment where he was going to be able to focus on football and school, as well as having familiarity with me as the head coach and with Coach Alexander as his position coach. It's a good, I think it was just a really good mix for both sides.
That year off, so that'll be like his redshirt year basically?
Yep.
So he'll have 3 to play 3?
3 for 3.
Okay. Same thing with Bregman. Do you feel like because he is kind of on another step, you were able to get a higher caliber guy than maybe you would?
Yeah, I mean, I think, let me say this about Tyler. Tyler, we were not the only team that was interested in his services. And he had several FBS offers. And so, again, the familiarity was what I think was the tipping point. we tripped him up right away, which was another thing that I think made a huge difference. We got him on campus before a lot of other things happened. And I think that he was here, and so there was some familiarity with not only myself. Coach Messingham had recruited him when he was the offensive coordinator at Iowa State, when Tyler was in high school. And I was on campus at Washington State when he and his mom and dad were coming through on official and unofficial visits. And so it was very easy in that regard to be able to say, okay, I know the offensive coordinator, I know the head coach, I've been on campus, I have a feel for this thing, I know there's an opportunity for me to be the guy, you know, win that job if the competition comes out my way. And so, again, I think it was just a perfect fit for both parties.
The other quarterback you signed, Chris Murray, looks like maybe a little bit of a project. How do you sell a guy like that who obviously has the running capability, but I imagine Messingham was a big part of it?
Let me say this. I talked about the length I was looking for. Well, I wrote on the board, what are we looking for? I said long, fast, or both. Chris Murray checks off both those boxes. Okay, he's 6'4" and the dude can fly, and he's not a bad passer. He's a kid that is, you know, just not as polished. I mean, he didn't go to Elite 11 camps. He was at Lawndale High School. It was a different set. This guy's ceiling is through the roof. I mean, he can be a really special player, and we wouldn't have him here if we didn't feel that way. And so, the other thing about Chris is, I mean, again, I wish you guys could talk to these kids. You get around them. You know, you'll just go, I want to coach that guy. You know, you can tell he's going to be a sponge. He's going to do everything we ask him to do. He really wants to be here. This is a place that he really feels at home and comfortable. And so those are things that you just can't, you know, you can't put value on them until you get in front of them. And so hopefully you guys will get the opportunity to get to know these kids down the road.
Can you just talk about the emotions that were going through your mind this morning, going through this process for the first time as a head coach?
No different than the emotion. Actually, I'll be honest with you, it was less stressful. Because usually, I'm the guy that's going, okay, we're on this guy, and this guy. What if this guy's in LI comes in? Then do I have to call this guy and tell him don't send it in? You know, I mean, I've been in some of those tight situations coaching at places like Florida and Washington, and so it's more stressful sometimes as the assistant because the head guy's looking at you like, when's this thing coming in? I mean, I look at it like this. It's like, you know, I really don't get shook up over the guys we don't get. I just worry about the ones that we get here and taking care of them. And so now my real recruiting starts, which is getting back together with the guys that are here right now.
Did you have to employ any sort of different strategies, being that you had so many guys committed when you took this job?
I had to make sure I felt good about them. Had to make sure that they were going to match the values that I wanted them to have. I had to sit down with them and talk to them and get to know them and their families. And I made that a priority the first week that I got the job, you know, with the majority of these kids that were committed to us. And so they wouldn't be on this list if I didn't feel good about them. That was maybe the different part of the process. You know, I go down this list and there's a story for every kid. And they're great kids. And, you know, I talked about their academic prowess. But I think that they're going to represent this university in a first-class fashion, and that's the objective.
You said in your introductory press conference, and then also sort of alluded to it just a little bit ago, that you didn't have to have the entire class figured out by today. How much room do you have to?
Enough. If there's anybody out there that, you know, can help us, and, you know, we'll have plenty of room. You know, I think we've left ourselves in a really good spot. And that might even be young men in the program that excel in spring ball that we can now reward because we didn't spend all our money on signing day. And so, you know, we have some guys that we're interested in right now that we've got to go through the process with, whether they're bounce down guys that are going to be late qualifiers, all of those things come into play. And so I think it's in the best interest of this program to hold things back and be patient and get the right fit.
Earlier this afternoon, Coach Stitt said he thought they won Montana in a landslide, but looks to me, I mean, you guys got 7 that they offered, and they only got 3 that you offered. So how would you evaluate the in-state battle with Montana?
I'm not worried about the University of Montana. I'm worried about Montana State University and our kids here. And so I don't see it as a competition between them and us. This is about the right kid for us at Montana State. And if the fit's right, we're going to go to war and battle for that young man. And at the end of the day, the one thing I will say is this: these decisions come down to these kids. These are 18-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids and their families that sometimes get torn a bunch of different ways. And I've always felt that you got to be really respectful of that. And I encourage these young men to go take a look around. You know, I don't want them here if I've got to twist their arm. I want them to feel really good about being here and being around our coaches and our culture. And so if it becomes hostile, that's not fair to the kid. And so I just try to be really respectful of them in the process. And you know, I don't believe in negative recruiting. I just don't. I think, you know, we're here to talk about Montana State and our program and what we can do to help these young men move forward. And you know, I think the University of Montana is a great place. If a kid wants to go there, that's their deal. I'm never gonna berate another institution, and so that's a kid's decision.
You mentioned just the overall academic prowess of this class. I talked to almost every kid on this list, and they loved all the things you showed them in terms of campus, business school, engineering program, all that kind of stuff. Do you think that the momentum Montana State has on the academic side aided in recruiting and will aid you going forward as well?
Yeah, I said this in my press conference. The academic profile of this university is one of the things that attracted me to it. You know, I didn't just say, well, you know what, they got a football team. You know, I did my homework. The internet again. So we got that out of there. And but yeah, you know, I think that's really important in terms of the overall product. You know, it's not just about what we do between the white lines. It's the experience that we can create for these kids. And when the experience on the academic side of campus is as good as it is here, it does help. And we're very proud of that.
Jacob Hadley's one of the only guys on the list that doesn't have a defined position. You don't see a lot of 6'6" guys in the secondary, but what do you like about him in terms of being able?
One of the things that I always look for with athletes is position versatility, guys that can do more than one thing. And when we sat down and talked to Jacob about where we saw him specifically, I was very upfront about the fact that it could be a lot of things. It really depends on, you know, you come in and through your, let's say your freshman year at the end, you're 245. Well, you're probably not a slot receiver anymore, buddy. Okay, so are we going to be able to slide you down and play tight end, H-back? Do you go to the defensive line? Do you play linebacker? You know, I don't know. But I know this. I love Jacob Hadley, and I wanted him to be a Bobcat. And I loved his family. I mean, you just got the right feel. And so, you know, again, talking about honesty and transparency in recruiting, I'm not going to tell a kid something that I don't think is true. I think I'm always going to be honest and upfront with them and their family, and I think they felt that authenticity when they were here on their visit. It felt like they trusted us enough to do what was right for him based on how he developed as a player.
You said you've got some money left to spend. And what are the priorities then going forward?
Back to what Ted was talking about earlier. You know, we try to fill our needs, you know, in the recruiting class, and then you hold that money back and you say, get through spring ball, and you're like, yeah, we probably need one of those.
Do you feel like you addressed most of those today, or are there any areas where maybe you came up short today?
I'd say that if we were looking for one thing, it'd probably be, you know, maybe two things. Yeah, I want to continue to develop our defense with high school players, but I think that we could probably use an interior defensive lineman and maybe one more guy in the secondary. Those are if the right guy came along. You know, I'm not going to just spend money to spend money. We're going to get the right fit here.
Even though, you didn't sign 6 defensive backs like you said, but does having a guy like Nigel that's played at a really high level give you some level of, or a higher level of comfort with just having 2 guys that look like secondary right off the bat?
Well, I'd say this. I think we had a lot of young players that contributed last year, and so I'm excited to see how they develop under Coach Alexander's tutelage through the course of the spring. And then after we go through spring ball, we have the opportunity to evaluate where we're at, and then still have the ability to address some of those needs if we feel like we need to.
Gatorade Player of the Year, an in-town guy, so how big of a priority was that, making sure the Blue stayed home?
Yeah, we wanted Blue a lot from the standpoint of what kind of player he was. He's a dynamic kid. I mean, every time you turn the tape on, you're just like, there he is again. And then you get around him and you know that, you know, I remember sitting and talking with him about, you know, what's important to you. You know what he said? Winning. And I was like, okay, that's kind of important to me too. We might have a guy that we can get along with here. And so I like the fact he's a winner, you know, and so I think it was important for us to keep him here, not just because he's a Bozeman High kid and he was one of the best players in the state, but because of, again, the fit. You know, the type of kid he is, what was important to him, his values, how they matched up with our values and our vision here.
Derek Marks committed years ago, honestly.
Yeah.
Having a guy like that stuck with you for so long and it was kind of the glue guy of this class, how important was that for you?
Yeah, another guy. I mean, you know, I just feel so good about these kids. I mean, you get around him, you get around his family, you're like, yeah, this is no brainer. I know he's going to be one of the hardest working guys in this program. I know he's going to be a high character young man. I know he's going to represent us in a first class fashion, and he's going to be a really productive player for us.